This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So we've gotten another update on Nick Chubb's injury via social media video of Nick Chubb moving around in what appears to be a training session with also current Cleveland Browns running back Aiden Robbins. So here's that footage.
Move. Hold contact. Good. Move. Hold contact.
This footage is very encouraging, right? And it's stacked on top of a lot of encouraging things that we have seen and heard about Nick Chubb's rehab process. Now, I want to start this video out by being very, very careful. My one thing I don't love about this Nick Chubb thing is the looseness in which everybody has thrown out timelines. And I'm not going to throw out or claim that there is a new timeline for Nick Chubb's injury. All I'm going to do is kind of put together everything that we know about this injury, everything that we've heard so far about this injury, put it all in one video and kind of just let us figure out how we feel or where you feel about where Nick Chubb is on this. So let's be very careful about this, whether your timeline for Nick Chubb is as aggressive as saying he's going to be back for week 1, or your personal timeline for Chubb is saying he's not going to play until after the bye week. Let's all agree here that we're just going to take information as it comes and not dig into our heels on whatever timeline you decided was going to be Nick Chubb's injury timeline in June. Let's just go with what's out there. And whenever Nick Chubb is cleared, that is when the timeline is up. So that's my first point, right? Because I feel like we're doing a thing where we're digging into what we feel like is the responsible timeline. And if it's not following that timeline or anything ahead of that timeline, something the Browns are forcing Nick Chubb to play before he's ready, and that's going to be a whole narrative. And I feel like that's not very responsible. And I see that as a consequence of how we've been going about this. So that's first. I'm not offering a timeline in this video. What I've heard is that anytime, if Nick Chubb sees any time on the field in October, whether it be early October, whether it be late October, the team currently sees that as an absolute win right now. So for them, October, if he's ahead of schedule, October is when he would play, from what I've heard in the offseason. I don't know how old that information is, but that is what the Browns feel, or at least what I'm led to believe that the Browns feel. And I think that's the information that a lot of beat reporters are working off of. Now, one thing to understand about timelines that the team puts out, they're gonna be the most conservative timelines possible when it comes to injury. Because if you say a player is gonna be back in November and he's back in September, everybody's happy. If you say a player is going to be back in September and it's October and that player's still not back, now you got a thing on your hands. You got a big problem, a controversy on your hands. So knowing that's how the media operates, knowing that's how we as people operate and how we're going to manifest some kind of anxiety about a player's injury status, is that if we hear from the team a timeline and it's past that timeline, we're going to be very concerned. So teams, knowing that information, put out the most conservative timeline. They're not going to put out a very aggressive. If they thought that if Nick Chubb really attacks and he gets aggressive, he can play in week 1, they're never going to tell us that. They're going to tell us and put out the most conservative timeline because that makes sense for them to do so. That's how you cover your ass, right? So that all makes sense, that the team feels like anytime he sees the field in October, if that happens, it's an absolute win for the organization. Look at the mess that was created with the Deshaun Watson shoulder thing during the season, and look how the team has responded to that whole mess, right? The Deshaun Watson shoulder thing turned into a legitimate fiasco where people were questioning whether Deshaun Watson, a guy who has played through having one of his eyes blinded, who has played through a pierced rib, who's played through an ACL tear in his NFL, a guy who is well known and well documented for playing through injuries, because a timeline was put out publicly, not necessarily by the team, but by Deshaun Watson himself, that he was not going to miss any time, and then he misses 4 weeks. That caused a lot of panic, right? If the Browns put out that Nick Chubb's going to be back week 1 and it's week 4 and he's not back yet, it's going to cause a similar amount of panic. They're going to put out a conservative timeline. I would like to point out here too that Deshaun Watson got that shoulder surgery. It seems like he's been ahead of schedule pretty much all summer, right? When you hear from Quincy Avery, when you hear from Deshaun Watson, they're always alluding to being ahead of schedule, but it hasn't sounded like that from the Browns side of things until very recently. Again, all summer, all spring and summer, it's felt like Deshaun Watson's been ahead of schedule. We've only really gotten confirmation recently from Andrew Berry that Deshaun Watson is, in fact, ahead of schedule. That's how conservatively they're going to move with information about injuries. So that's something to keep in mind when you hear timelines unofficially that feel like they're coming from the team. So now let's talk about Nick Chubb, because here's what we know about Nick Chubb. We heard that he was running on flat ground from multiple sources, including Andrew Berry in a press conference in April. We know that he was running on flat ground in April. We also know, and we also saw video and reports of Nick Chubb sprinting in May. There was video of him running. I don't think he was sprinting in that video, but there were reports that in that same session, he was also sprinting. So I assume that somewhere he was running really fast. I don't know if he was full out sprinting, but he was running. He was clearly running. A few weeks ago, I had Cam Justice on for an interview, and she said that Nick Chubb was squatting again. She had heard that he was squatting again. So we know that Nick Chubb is squatting. Now it's June, and we have videos of him doing one-legged workouts. We have videos of him moving lateral. If he's doing that, he's certainly squatting. Like, it's pretty much confirmed. And that's where Nick Chubb is. Now, again, I don't want to get carried away. I don't want to look at this stuff and look at these clips and piece things together like Charlie from Always Sunny and say that that means Nick Chubb's going to play week 1, September. Put it down. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, from the outside looking in, this seems like Nick Chubb is on a good pace. Where that pace ends, I don't know. But it seems like Nick Chubb is on a good pace with his rehab. It seems like he is making good progress on his rehab. If you were somebody worried that Nick Chubb wasn't going to be able to play at a high level this year, I think this is a significant sign to show you, hey, he might be back. If you were somebody who was really concerned if Nick Chubb could play at all this year, because I know there were some of you guys in the comment section, this should ease you. He's definitely going to play this year. Like that, I can say pretty confidently. Now, what that timeline is, I'm not going to put out one. I feel like, again, that would be irresponsible. There was a physical therapist who saw this video. Here was his 2 cents on this whole thing. He said, a couple of thoughts. Nick Chubb is 7 months, 13 days out from his ACL surgery. He has 2 months to keep training before week 1. This is great progress, working single leg stability in dynamic control, explosive deceleration, stability, lateral movement. If an athlete regains dynamic stability in change of direction and control, accelerate decel, production seems to follow. Brain knowing where limb is in space is key for sports activity return. If he did actually have a ACL repair and not a reconstruction, we're not sure on what surgery Nick Chubb had. The reporting on it indicates that it was a ACL repair. I'm not going to speak on the surgery. I don't know the exact details of the surgery, so let me be very careful there. But if he actually had a ACL repair and not a reconstruction, his timeline bumps up by months. Think Zach Ertz repair versus deconstruction, December, August return. This would shift the likelihood of playing from November up to September. So yes, there's actually a decent chance he is active week 1, which should allow him to return closer to full form football activities mid-season versus a mid-season return that would be a late return to form closer to December. He also goes on to add an addendum on this. This is more of a maybe he does return sooner than he expects. Not sure how good it is for fantasy given the minimal upside. Okay, now he's talking about fantasy football, and that's where I check out. But again, he's not saying that, oh, write it down, book him, draft Nick Chubb, he's going to be back week 1. Nobody is saying that. But it looks good. And that's all you get. Same thing with Deshaun Watson, right? There weren't a lot of timelines on Deshaun Watson. It felt like the timeline was moving. But now we see Deshaun Watson throwing pretty regularly, right? He's throwing with his quarterback coach during individual workouts by himself without the team. He's throwing at team workouts. He's clearly on track, if not ahead of track. And we heard Andrew Berry say that Deshaun Watson's ahead of track. Same thing with Nick Chubb. Right now, the unofficial timeline has been November. That's what most people are going. He should be back by the latest in November. If he plays in October, absolute win. That has been kind of the general timeline people have been working off of since Nick Chubb finished his surgery. But now that the rehab process is not just started, has really gotten going, this is where we're at. I don't know what that has done to that timeline, but it would appear to me that it's possible that he could reach the more aggressive parts of that timeline. Now, again, Nick Chubb, it's a terrible injury he suffered. It should not be underestimated how difficult it is going to be to come back from that. And on average, it takes people a while to come back from those kind of injuries that Nick Chubb sustained in that game versus Pittsburgh. Those are the facts. But remember, those averages are compiled by the average person. When it comes to this, Nick Chubb has demonstrated that he is an outlier. A lot of rehab is working out. Nick Chubb is also an outlier in that. When he had a crazy knee injury in college, he was an outlier in his recovery. That doesn't mean you should expect Nick Chubb to be an outlier. That doesn't mean that you should expect Nick Chubb to have a record return from this injury. But it does mean that you shouldn't count Nick Chubb out. And that's all I want to get across. Let's let this process continue. We're seeing more evidence of Nick Chubb making good progress in this process. And that's all we want to see it as right now. I don't want to put out new timelines. I don't want to make people think that I'm saying that he's going to be back week 1, because it's most certainly not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that it looks like the rehab is going good for Nick Chubb. And we'll see what that means as far as his timeline for return. Because when he's ready, he will play. He's not going to get rushed back by the team. When he's ready, he will play. That's why they signed Deontay Foreman. It's why they drafted Jerome Ford. It's why they brought in Nyheim Hines, so that they can wait until Nick Chubb is ready for him to play. They're not going to rush him back. It's not something that they're interested in doing at all. When that is, we all don't know. But we will find out soon enough, right? Once camp starts, if we're getting to August and we're hearing that Nick Chubb might do a couple walkthroughs and stuff like that means that, oh, okay, things are going well. But right now, from the outside looking in, it looks like this rehab process is going well. We've heard nothing but positive things about Nick Chubb's progress throughout this. We haven't heard or gotten whiffs of a setback. And with a video like that coming out, if there was a setback for Nick Chubb, it would have come out when that video hit. So if we don't hear anything super negative on that front about his injury, we're probably sitting here doing pretty good. But that's what I know about the Nick Chubb knee injury. And that's how I'm going to try to responsibly talk about this injury. Because again, I don't want to create false expectations of Nick Chubb. I don't want people mad at Nick Chubb because some people got excited off of something I said and thought that he would be back in September and he comes back in October. I just want to talk about what Nick Chubb's doing right now and be happy about the fact that it looks like his rehab is going well. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.